So I'm going to divide everything by negative 3x. And when I do that, I'm left with x squared minus 2x minus 8. Let's factor that down, make a box. So you need two numbers that multiply to be negative 8, but add to negative 2. And those numbers would be what? 4 and negative 2, or negative 4 and positive 2? Negative 4 and a positive 2. Okay, let's take our GCFs out. So x times x is the only thing that multiplies to be x squared. I could take out a negative 4 from the second column and a positive 2 from the second row. So my factors are negative 3x, set that equal to 0. Take the x plus 2, set that equal to 0. And x minus 4, set that equal to 0. Go ahead and solve those three equations. So for the first one, you have to divide both sides by negative 3. When you divide both sides by negative 3, 0 divided by negative 3 is 0. So x equals 0. For my second equation, I have to subtract the 2. So x equals negative 2. And for my third equation, I need to add 4. X equals 4. So let's make our sketch. And I kind of like to just make my own. Let me just make our little sketch. Doesn't have to be perfect. So mark my axis up here. Put your points. Put one at 0. Put a point at negative 2, and then put a point at positive 4. So because this right here, this is an odd degree, I know my arrows are opposite. So let's start with the right side. On the right, which is off the 4, is it going to go down or will it go up? And to know that, you have to look at the sign of the number in front of that x cubed. So notice how that says it's a negative. That means that it goes down. And on the left, it goes up. And you just make your loop-de-loop, and that is your sketch. So we're going to just do a little bit more practice on long division and synthetic division. So go to page 290. We're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. And let's do synthetic division. It's a third degree, so I'm looking for 3 answers. And they already gave me 1. So 1 answer is 2. Put that 2 on the outside. There is an invisible 0x to the first that's right in between these two. So the numbers that I list across the top, because notice how I went from a third degree to a second degree, I skipped over a first degree. So we have to put that 0 in as a placeholder. So the numbers across the top will be 1, -6, 0, and positive 16. So let's do our synthetic division. Drop down that first number. Multiply 1 times 2. Put that under the -6. Add these 2 numbers together, and you get -4. Now take -4, multiply that by positive 2, and you get -8. Add that together, and you get -8. Multiply, and you get -16. Add that together, and you get 0. So I can be confident that I did that correctly. This is my A, B, and C. So now we need to solve that. We need to get our other answers. Can that be factored? Do we have any numbers that multiply to be -8 and add to -4? No. So what does that mean? What do we have to do when that happens? What do we have to use if you can't factor it? Quadratic formula. So let's go ahead and do that. So let me write the quadratic formula. So let's start off by finding your discriminant. So b squared minus 4ac. In your calculators, figure out what -4 squared minus 4 times a times c is equal to. Type that in. I got 48. Anybody else get 48? Or did I type it in wrong? Okay. I think it's 48. 48. Now let's take the square root of 48, because remember, we have to take the square root of that number. And if you're using the yellow calculator, we want a decimal. We want a decimal. So you have to hit the triangle above the enter key, and it's going to make it a decimal. You should get 6.9, approximately 6.9. If you're not getting that, bring up your calculator and I'll help you type that in. To find my last 2 answers, it would be x equals, I'm gonna have to give myself some more space, so okay. So to get my last 2 answers, it would be x equals the opposite of b. So b was, I shouldn't erase that. So we had x squared minus 4x minus 8, right? So a is 1, b is -4, c is -8. Okay. So my two answers are x equals the opposite of b. So b is -4, so it's +4 plus 6.9. Divide that by 2 times a, which is 1. So type that in your calculator. Put 4 plus 6.9, and then hit enter, and then divide that by 2. You should get 5.45 for your second answer, so make sure that's what you got. And then for my second answer is x equals 4 minus 6.9 divided by 2 times 1. Type that in your calculator. And you should have negative 1.45. And that would be your 3 answers. So if you can't factor it, you have to use the quadratic formula. Okay, our last question for today is, go to page 291 and let's look at number 6. So again, set up your synthetic division. It's a third degree, so I'm looking for 3 solutions. They told me 1, which was -5. And I need to find the other 2. Put your -5 on the outside and list your 4 numbers. So 3, 9, -25, and +25. All right, take about 60 seconds and see if you can do synthetic division. And then I'll go over it. We'll go over it together. Okay, so let's look at the, so you bring down the first number, multiply the 3 by -5. 3 times -5 is -15. You add these 2 numbers together, and then you repeat. -6 times -5 is +30. Add, and you get +5. +5 times -5 is -25. So again, I know I did it right because I ended with a 0. This is A, B, and C. So let's see if this one is factorable. In order for me to factor this, I would need 2 numbers that multiply to 15 and add to -6. Do those numbers exist? Multiply to be 15 because 3 times 5 is 15, and add to be -6. So let's see. 5 and -3 will multiply to be -15, so that's not going to work. So if they're both positive, 5 and 3, then that would add to be -8. So that's not going to work. So are there any numbers? Let me save you some stress. There is not. So let's do the quadratic formula again. Start off with your discriminant. So in your calculators, take -6 squared minus 4 times A times C. And you should get -24. Did you get -24? So that means that my last two solutions are imaginary. So let's simplify the square root of -24. First, I'm going to take out a -1. And if you build a cake, you're going to have a pair of 2's. So this simplifies to 2I root 6. So when you have imaginary solutions, you can't write your last two answers as decimals. It's actually a little bit easier. So your final answer is x equals the opposite of b, which is +6, plus or minus 2I root 6, all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 3, and that would be 6. So these are your answer. This is one answer, and this is two answers. So if you check Canvas, I did post the remaining assignments for the semester. You have these assignments are not open yet, but this one is. Okay, so this is your final exam review. It covers everything from the first semester. You can use your notes on your final. You can use 1 page of notes. So I definitely recommend that you start working through that now. So use this time. You're going to have a lot of time built into class to work on your review. So, for example, this one is due on the 8th, which is the 8th is Wednesday. So this is due Wednesday. This is due Thursday, Friday, Monday, etc., etc. And this is third period, so your final is Thursday, December 16th. It is required that everyone take the final. I know in the past the final was optional. It is not optional. Everyone has to take the final exam. The good news is if you pass the final, you pass the class. So if you have an F, let's say you have a 25%, and you pass the final, you will earn your credit. It will be a D minus, which is the lowest grade you can possibly have to get a credit, but it would count as a credit. So with that being said, I really should see everybody in here working on something. Everybody.